In this episode of Enterprise, the ship is hijacked by a gang of religious zealots from a planet called Trian. Trian. This is a review of the Star Trek Enterprise episode, Chosen Realm. If you have not seen this episode and you don't want to know whether or not the bad guys really killed Captain Archer, be warned. Spoilers beyond this point. So, this episode is from Enterprise's high-concept third season, where the big year-long story arc is about the ship heading into this mysterious and chaotic region of space called the Delphic Expanse to stop aliens called the Xindi from launching a weapon that will destroy planet Earth. The Enterprise crew has discovered that there are dozens of these gigantic spheres positioned throughout the expanse, and they are responsible for all the weird space shit that happens in this region. As the episode begins, Trip and Travis are in a shuttle pod conducting a survey of one of the spheres. They finish up and head back to Enterprise, and we see that these guys on another ship nearby are monitoring them. The leader of this bunch, this guy named Digimat, says something ominous like, "This is what we've been looking for," to take us into the credits. When that terrible song from Patch Adams is done playing, we come back to Enterprise, where they've just received a distress call from Digimat's ship. Digimat hails Enterprise like, "Help, our engines are broken, our life support is failing, we need help, we're totally helpless, please bring us aboard your ship, we're not a threat at all." Archer allows Digimat's ship to dock with Enterprise, and Digimat and all his people come aboard. They're in sickbay when Archer comes down to meet them, but Dr. Phlox is like, "I don't know what to tell you. They have some minor injuries related to being close to that sphere for a few months, but I can't examine them any further because they object to medical treatment on religious grounds." Archer's like, "Oh Christ, here we go." And he approaches Digimat and introduces himself. Digimat's like, "Hey, thanks for picking us up. Yeah, we were on a pilgrimage to the sphere. Our ship is old, and we really don't know too much about space travel. When technical issues come up, we mostly just, pray." Digimat explains more later when he joins Archer and T'Pol for dinner in the captain's mess. His people come from a planet called Trianon. They don't know anything about the Xindi. They're just here to worship the spheres, not to study them, mind you, but simply to bask in their awesome presence. Their whole religion revolves around the spheres, and they regard the makers of the spheres as gods. Digimat is like, "Seeing a sphere is kind of a big deal for us. It's taken us a year to make this journey. I'll probably die having seen only one of the many thousands of spheres." T'Pol jumps in like, "Actually, there are 59 spheres. We counted them." Digimat says, "I think your estimate is low." And T'Pol's like, "Not by thousands." Archer promises Digimat to have his ship fixed and ready to go in a few days. Digimat promises to repay Archer for his kindness, which we know is code for "we are gonna fuck you all so hard," but Archer doesn't seem to suspect anything yet. Meanwhile, one of Digimat's followers, this woman, whose name is Indava, stops by sickbay to talk to Phlox about something very private. I wonder what that could be. Digimat and some of his other followers, most importantly this guy, Yarick, have a secret chat in the mess hall surrounded by the Enterprise crew, where Digimat is like, "Is everything ready for the thing?" And Yarick's like, "Should we really do the thing? These people seem nice. They helped us out." And Digimat says, "These people desecrated a sacred sphere by taking scans of it and trying to learn about it. The nerve of these assholes. Besides, with this ship, we can finally end the bloodshed on our home. So we're doing the thing." Digimat drops in on Archer and says, "So here's a fun fact. My people have all had powerful explosives implanted in their bodies, and they'll sacrifice themselves and detonate those explosives whenever I tell them to. Check this out." And he calls one of his people on a communicator, and that person, who is kneeling in a corridor somewhere else on the ship, stabs himself in the arm while chanting a prayer and explodes, taking out a section of the outer hull, killing himself and an Enterprise crew member who was standing around watching. Digimat says to Archer, "I've got people standing by near all of your key systems, including your warp core, so what I'm saying is, I control the ship now." Archer tells his people not to resist, and Digimat's gang takes over Enterprise, with some of Archer's key personnel still in place to run things, because Digimat's people don't know shit about how to fly a spaceship, apparently. The rest of the Enterprise crew is confined to quarters, except for Phlox, who remains in sickbay under guard. Digimat pays another visit to Archer and says, okay, so here's what's going to happen. For the last century, my planet has been at war with itself because a group of heretics have tried to ruin our whole way of life. So I'm going to show up with this ship and its advanced weapons, kill all the heretics, and bring peace. Now, doesn't that sound nice? Archer says, something tells me the heretics would think the same things about you that you think about them. Digimat says, well, yeah, they would. They're heretics. Then Digimat delivers some more bad news to Archer. Because the crew of Enterprise desecrated the sacred spheres by studying them scientifically, they must be punished. The proper punishment, according to Digimat's faith, is for Archer and all of his people to be executed. But since Digimat is such a nice guy, he'll allow Archer to select one member of his crew to be executed in the place of all the others. He tells Archer that he has 6 hours to choose someone. Then Digimat erases all the data the Enterprise crew has collected about the spheres so far. Later, Yarrick drops in on Archer to give him an update on repairs to the ship, as a courtesy, and Archer says, hey, by the way, you're married to Indava, right? Yeah, Phlox told me she stopped by sickbay. Apparently she's pregnant and wants an abortion? Aren't doctors supposed to keep conversations between them and patients about medical stuff private? Sure, but alas, poor Yarrick, we're super selective about when to follow medical ethics. Besides, you all did hijack the ship. Anyway, as far as the abortion goes, I'm totally cool with that, but I get the impression Digimat wouldn't be. If you and your wife aren't happy with how things are going in your faith, maybe we can help each other out. Yarrick's like, shut up, shut up, shut up, and leaves. He finds Indava in the corridor and says, what the hell, man? Are you trying to get us kicked out of the cult? Indava's like, I'm having second thoughts about raising our child in an environment where they'll grow up and have to fight in a holy war. Women! Am I right, guys? Archer comes to the ready room where Digimat has taken up residence and says, hey, I picked which one of my people you can kill for our, and I'm using this term super ironically, sins. Digimat's like, great, who is it? Travis? Why would it be Travis? No reason, just... Is it? No, asshole, it's me. I'm the captain. I'm responsible for the people on this ship. If somebody's gonna get crossed off for something we did, it should be me. I only have one request. Please execute me using our humane execution device located in the the execution room. Yeah, that's it. Digimat agrees, and he and Yarrick go to the transporter room with Archer and T'Pol, where they watch a demonstration of an equipment case being dematerialized. Archer's like, see, the molecules are dispersed, it's quick and painless, and that equipment case is definitely gone forever, just like I will be, just gone forever. So what do you say? Can we do it? Let's do it. Let's fucking do it. Do me! Digimat's like, okay, if I can't talk you out of it, you could always pick another crew member to die or choose a more painful method of execution. But if this is how you want it, so be it. And Archer steps up into the transporter pad and T'Pol dematerializes him like, okay, he's dead. That is definitely the end of Captain Archer as far as you know. However, shockingly, that is not the end of Captain Archer. A short while later, Phlox receives a text message from Archer on his console in sickbay asking if there's a way to neutralize the explosives Digimat's people have implanted in their bodies. Phlox texts back that he needs internal scans of them before he can figure it out. Archer's like, on it, and he sneaks into the corridor, chokes out the first one of Digimat's people he finds, ties that guy up and scans him, then sends the info to Phlox, who gets right to work. Archer surprises Yarrick in another corridor and convinces him to switch sides, telling him that if he follows Digimat, war is all he and his wife and child will ever know. Archer tells Yarrick that Phlox has synthesized an airborne compound that deactivates the explosives used by Digimat's people, but to release it, the environmental controls need to be rerouted to sickbay, and that can only be done from the bridge. That's going to be Yarrick's job. Archer's like, hey, by the way, why is your group at war with these so-called heretics? Yarrick says, oh, well, we believe the Makers created the spheres in 9 days, but the heretics believe it took them 10 days. Like, what the fuck, right? Archer's like, yeah, cool, at least you're fighting for a worthy cause, I guess. Meanwhile, on the bridge, a squad of ships controlled by some of those heretics shows up. Digimat is like, "Oh yeah, prepare to feel the wrath of God, unbelievers." Despite T'Pol's protests and efforts to stop him, Digimat fires on the other ships, quickly destroying one and starting a shooting match with the others. While this is going on, Yarick quietly slips over to a control panel and does his thing, and in sickbay, Phlox distracts his guard by releasing one of his pet bats to fly around, then sedates the guard and disperses the explosive deactivating compound. Archer gets his hands on some guns, breaks Reed out of his quarters, and says, "It's a reverse hijacking! We're taking back the ship!" Reed's like, "Taking back the ship? Uh-oh, better get Mako!" And they free the Makos, the highly trained military personnel who came along on this mission for extra security and who were absolutely no help whatsoever in preventing the ship from being hijacked, but whatever, I guess they're still good for something. And then Archer and Reed fight their way to engineering. A couple of Digimat's men discover to their dismay that they are no longer able to blow themselves up, and Archer disables the weapons and calls Digimat on the bridge like, "Hey, it's me, I'm still alive, thanks to advanced technology a dumb shit like you who worships giant space marbles could never hope to understand. I've taken control of the ship from engineering and neutralized your explosive implants. End this before anyone else gets hurt." Digimat's like, "Nope." So Reed and the Makos storm the bridge and take control, and Archer walks in and convinces the commander of the squad of attacking ships that the fight is over and they can fuck off now. There's a tense moment of uncertainty, then T'Pol says, "They're fucking off, Captain." Archer's like, "Phew, for a second there I was worried they weren't gonna fuck off, but then they fucked off. Okay." Later, Archer visits Digimat in the brig and says, "Guess what? We've arrived at your home planet. Come on, I'm dropping you assholes off and then getting back to what I came here to do." Digimat says, "You've done a terrible thing here, Captain. I was going to bring peace to my planet, but now that's not possible because you deny our sacred truth." Archer's like, "You want truth, motherfucker? I'll show you truth. Let's go see what's up." They fly Digimat and all his people down to the planet on shuttle pods, and when they get there, they find a bombed-out city. Nothing but rubble and broken shells of abandoned buildings as far as they can see. Archer tells Digimat, "From what we can tell, this happened about 8 months ago, while you were all on your pilgrimage. Both sides of your holy war have been decimated, all your major cities are gone, and millions are dead. You wanted peace? Here you go. Bye." And he leaves them all there in the shattered ruins of their world. The end. Archer's so cold, he's so cold. He's so cold, cold, cold like a tombstone. Archer's so cold, he's so cold. He's so cold, cold, cold like an ice cream cone. One of the challenges that the creators of Star Trek have faced since the beginning is how to make episodes like this one, with something obvious and very important to say, in such a way that the story is as compelling as the message being delivered. Sometimes they get it just right. The message and the story complement each other and amplify each other, and you get a show that is entertaining or exciting, built around memorable and interesting characters, and that feels like it's really about something. That's the sweet spot for Star Trek, as far as I'm concerned. But other times, you wind up with something like Chosen Realm. This is an episode with something to say that was extremely pertinent back when it first aired in 2004, just over 2 years and 4 months after the 9/11 attacks, and which is still extremely pertinent today for the same reasons and also slightly different reasons. Unfortunately, the best that the creators of this episode could come up with to deliver that message is a story that feels like it's been assembled from spare parts recycled from previous, more successful versions of this kind of thing. My main issue with the episode is that from the very beginning, it unfolds as a series of foregone conclusions. If you're a dedicated Star Trek fan, you can definitely see every major plot point coming a mile away, but even if you're not a Trekkie who's been watching this shit obsessively and seen all the episodes this one is cribbing from, I think you'll probably find this one extremely predictable. Every obstacle faced by Archer and his crew has an apparent and easily guessable solution, and that's always the solution they go for, and it always works. When you're writing a plot like this, where bad guys take the good guys hostage, it's necessary to include some blind spots or weaknesses, on the part of the bad guys so the good guys have something to exploit in order to escape and make their comeback. But Digimat and his gang make things so easy for Archer and the Enterprise crew that it barely even seems like a challenge. They take control of the ship by threatening to blow themselves up, but they don't actually know much about operating a ship as complex as Enterprise, so they leave people like T'Pol and Trip and Travis at their stations. Nobody on Archer's crew puts up a fight, not even the elite combat troops that have come along to the Expanse to protect the ship from exactly this sort of thing. Digimat's people confine everyone but those essential personnel to their quarters, except for Phlox, who insists he has to stay in sickbay to treat those wounded when Digimat's follower blew himself up in that corridor, and they just let him stay. Digimat sentences Archer to death, but allows him to choose his own method of execution and doesn't seem to question it at all, which goes along with his general disdain for science and technology, but is still extremely convenient. Speaking of convenient, not only does Digimat have a doubter, Yarick, in a senior position in his group, waiting to be exploited, but he sends Yarick in to visit privately with Archer just because. What a nice opportunity for the two of them to have a chat so Archer can play on Yarick's misgivings about this whole situation and turn him into an asset. To watch the episode is to watch the characters slide from one trope to the next with no significant resistance and little in the way of innovation. How are they going to take back the ship? When any one of Digimat's people can blow themselves up? Why, we'll just have old Phlox release an airborne compound to neutralize the explosives. Releasing an airborne compound to neutralize something always works. How is Phlox going to do that while he's under guard in sickbay? Why, he'll just distract the guard somehow and sedate him. Distracting the guard and sedating him always works. At least the relatively lower tech level of this show's version of the Enterprise means that Phlox at least has to screw a canister of something into a pipe in order to release the compound. On TNG, all somebody would have to do is push a few buttons on a touchscreen or tell the computer to do it. There's no urgency here. The ship has been taken over by zealots who are willing to sacrifice themselves at a moment's notice to get what they want. Not only is Archer's mission to save Earth being compromised, the very lives of Archer and the crew are on the line. This situation should feel dangerous, unstable, unpredictable. Instead, there's not a scrap of tension or peril to be found anywhere. Even Archer's death sentence never feels real, not even for a moment. It's clear that he's going to choose himself to die for the crew, and as soon as he requests to be killed via the transporter, it's clear what's going to happen next. It's not just obvious that the crew is going to retake the ship eventually, we assume that much going in. It's obvious how. And as a result, the episode isn't able to generate the least bit of suspense on the way to that result. It doesn't help anything that Digimat as a villain is a limp noodle. The performance by Connor O'Farrell is fine, but it's not nearly as charismatic as it needs to be for a character like this. Digimat never seems to actually possess the convictions he claims to have. At one point, after his team has taken over the ship, Digimat tells Archer a story about when he was a young man fighting in the war against the heretics, and he chose to kill a child who had discovered him rather than allow the child to flee and give away their position to the enemy. The anecdote is meant to show us how absolutely dedicated to his cause Digimat is, and how ruthless he's capable of being, but I don't believe it for a second. I don't believe he believes it, which creates a problem as far as the credibility of the villain is concerned. The script by Manny Coto, who would become the series' showrunner in the following season, introduces promising conflicts that could have served both the story and the message, then fails to capitalize on them. A science versus religion argument between T'Pol and Digimat is begun, but never followed up on or resolved in any meaningful way. It's just kind of there for a scene, and then it's gone. Same thing with Indava going to Phlox to seek an abortion. We don't even see Indava's actual conversation with Phlox. We hear about it secondhand from Archer. It's a plot device, nothing more. Finally, we get the ending, which isn't a complete failure, but would probably have landed with a lot more impact if it wasn't A, so shamelessly telegraphed, and B, lifted straight from the classic Trek episode, Let That Be Your Last Battlefield. In fact, if you squint at it, all of Chosen Realm kinda looks like a loose remake of Let That Be Your Last Battlefield, with religious extremism standing in for racism. My feelings on this episode are generally negative, but that doesn't mean there's nothing here of value. The message is delivered in a poorly crafted package, but it's still a vital message which people needed to hear 20 years ago, and which, sadly, people still need to hear today. That message is not anti-religion, it's anti-religious extremism. When Archer confronts Yarick and forces him to choose his side, he doesn't say, stop following Digimat because your religious beliefs are dumb and you're dumb for having them. He asks him, is this the faith you were raised in? Is this what you really believe your gods want, for you to kill thousands of people in their name? That distinction between religion in general and extremist interpretations of religion is still an important one today, and was even more so when this episode was originally broadcast, when millions of Americans were eager to believe that the entire religion of Islam was the enemy. Star Trek Enterprise, particularly during this third season, is very much a post-9/11 show. Producing an episode like this with a message that warns against religious extremism without throwing all religions and all religious believers under the bus is very much in the tradition of Star Trek, and this atheist, for one, appreciates that the effort was made. Viewed today in our present context, the message of Chosen Realm hits a little differently. Despite the undeniably serious threats exemplified by the 9/11 attacks, I'm not sure if the radical Islamists who carried out those attacks were ever actually our most dangerous enemies, but nowadays it's pretty clear that the greatest peril faced by our society comes from within, not from without. The extremists that have taken control of our government here in the United States share an uncomfortable amount in common with Digimat and the extremists who take control of Enterprise in this episode. They claim the right to forcibly impose their ideology on others. They justify their every foolish and savage act with their belief that they are absolutely in the right, and in some cases that they are serving the will of God. And if facts, or science, or logic, or basic human decency stand between them and their goals, they sweep those things away without a thought. They are fanatics, and to fanatics, everything must either be made to serve their fanaticism or be destroyed. Watching this episode this morning, that scene where Digimat deletes all the data Enterprise has collected on the sphere so far, that hit me a lot harder than I was expecting. Because here I am, living in a world where my government is systematically trashing decades of medical research, killing funding for science, for climate studies, for weather tracking, killing funding for public broadcasting, the president firing the commissioner of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and all of it for no good reason, all of it because the people currently in charge don't want to be guided or convicted by the truth. They want the power to determine what the truth is in the minds of the people. To them, just as it is to Digimat, knowledge is blasphemy. Is it a good episode? Not really. The director is Roxanne Dawson, who, in addition to playing B'Elanna Torres on Voyager, helmed a dozen episodes of Star Trek, most of them on Enterprise. The direction here is fine. It's as good as it needs to be, but it never rises above the generally middling level of the overall production. Like many, many other episodes of Enterprise, Chosen Realm is an inoffensive, uninspired tour through familiar territory. But at least it's trying to take us somewhere we need to go. Those are my thoughts on Chosen Realm. What do you think of this episode? Please share your thoughts with me in the comments. If you'd like to support this channel, and I sure wish you would if you can afford it, you can do so by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Steve Shives, becoming a channel member by clicking the join button, or by making a one-time gift by clicking the thanks button, or via PayPal or Venmo. Links are in the description. That does it for the Hijacked batch. Please join me next time as we begin a new batch of reviews, which will be another grab bag. That means I'll be reviewing a randomly selected episode from each of the 6 Star Trek shows covered by this retro review series. We begin, as you might expect, with Star Trek the Original Series. The episode of classic Trek I pulled out of the grab bag is one from Season 3, and it's titled, "And the Children Shall Lead." See you next time for that. Thanks for watching, and take care, everybody.